All right. Um, we'll get going here, and then other people can join. So thanks to everybody for taking time out of your busy days to jump on here. So I'm Matt Vandenbroek. I'm the director of commercial origination here at GreenSpark, oversee our commercial sales and development teams. We just wanted to do a webinar to kind of give a little more detail on, what municipalities can do in New York, some of the different programs that are available, and sort of how we've worked with municipalities in the past on these projects. There's a lot of great opportunities out there to pursue different types of projects or different types of programs. So we're just gonna kind of walk through that. If anyone has questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll I'll answer them sort of throughout the meeting as needed. And yeah, let's get started. All right, so for those who don't know, GreenSpark Solar, so we are headquartered in the greater Rochester area, about 140 people strong at this point. It's our latest retreat picture. So GreenSpark, we have a few different elements to our company. So we're a residential installer. We're also a large-scale solar EPC. So we're building out projects for large ground mount projects for industry partners around the state. We have our C&I division, which is our commercial rooftop division. So basically building, rooftop systems throughout New York State. And then our development team, which is working on developing our own ground mount projects. We've been in business since 2002. Have been doing solar, residential commercial solar since about 2011. And to date, have installed over 340 megawatts of solar. Just some more detail on who we are. We pride ourselves on the quality of work we do. We've received a NYSERDA Gold status installer rating from NYSERDA, which again speaks to the quality of work that we're doing. We are a B corporation, which means we have a triple bottom line: people, planet, profits. And so not only are we in the business of making money, we're also in the business of helping our community, making sure our employees are paid fair wages, and obviously helping the planet by installing solar. We're one of the leaders in the industry. I'd say we're one of the larger solar companies and installers based in New York State, which we'll get into some of the reasons why. We were a 2022 top contractor in Solar Power World. We were top workplaces, and we've won the Greater Rochester Top 100 a couple of times, most recently in 2023 as the fastest growing company in the area. And we are members of the Amicus Solar Cooperative, which is a national buying cooperative of somewhere around 80 different similar sized solar companies, basically pooling our resources to get best in industry pricing on modules, whatever other equipment that we're trying to get to. So we've laid out three kind of different ways to approach or how municipalities can sort of approach solar in their community. So the first way is you can save money by going solar. So we've done this with a number of projects. So this is a picture of the mayor of Brockport. We did a project for them a number of years ago where basically, and there's a slide on it, basically we installed a system on a closed landfill, a capped landfill, basically land that they weren't really doing anything else with. And we funded the project with our finance partner. So we basically took on all the costs, built the system for them, and then they are purchasing the power from it under a long-term power purchase agreement. So that's just sort of one of the ways that we do this. When a town or a municipality goes solar, you can secure immediate savings. So that's generally how we like to structure these is because historically municipalities haven't been able to utilize the tax credits. We've been doing different kind of structures. Usually it's a third party structure where we're putting up all the money, we're taking sort of on all the risk of development, and then the town's agreeing to lease us the land if there's land available, or just agreeing to purchase the power from it. The benefits of this type of structure, right? I mean, with any of our projects, you can protect against electricity rate hikes and volatility, right? I mean, I think we've seen over the last, several years specifically, electricity prices jump to really high levels and then come down to significantly lower levels. So that volatility in the market is going to continue. And, by having solar at your town facility or a business, anything like that, you can help protect against some of that volatility. These projects can increase resiliency for the grid, and create different funding opportunities for climate smart communities, which we'll get into. So like I said, there's a couple different ways you can do this, right? We've done a municipally owned rooftop system, right? Where it's on a town facility. The town funded the project. They got a number of grants to do it, and then we installed it. That's sort of the most straightforward way to do it. However you pay for it or finance it, you get the energy savings from that system for the lifetime. You could do it on municipally owned land, right? We can build a system on town property, structure it with a lease or not a lease, structure it with energy savings or not. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. On the municipal land, like the question comes in there about, what's the status of the land? How much can we actually put there? And what's going on with the grid, for us to be able to determine whether we're able to actually interconnect the system. Again, all questions that we get into, and that's where the local land host, because we can do projects where maybe the town just has a piece of land. They're not interested in getting into any sort of arrangement where they're receiving electricity from it. They just want a lease payment. We can do that too. And that's become a pretty standard structure. Again, making use of land that may not have another use and sort of generating income that way. So I sort of alluded to this historically, communities not having the ability to take advantage of tax credits. With the Inflation Reduction Act passed in 2022, part of that was making municipalities and not-for-profits eligible for a direct pay. So sort of like a cash payment that's equal to 30%. So again, this is still fairly new, and oftentimes there's still advantages for a third party to own it in certain situations because they can take advantage of depreciation benefits. But a nice option to have if the community says, look, we want to finance this ourselves. In addition to the 30%, there's funding from NYSERDA. There's potentially funding through some other programs as well that can help offset the cost. But this is sort of like the straightforward. If you want to put some solar on a building, on a DPW building, something like that, you would be able to qualify for the tax direct pay tax credit. So I think, mentioned our success in New York State. I mean, one of the reasons we've been so successful, in addition to, our focus on quality and focus on community, is just how New York State has approached supporting renewable energy. It's certainly one of the best states in the country for it. They've laid out the 70% renewable goal, 100% EVs, zero emissions, by 2040. So lots of different programs, particularly through NYSERDA, which have provided a lot of runway for us to continue to grow, provide sort of consistency, right? I think some other neighboring states have somewhat better programs, but they usually have short lives on them. Whereas New York has generally had an approach that allows time for the projects for companies to grow sustainably and for those projects to grow sustainably. And I got a couple questions that came in. So the relationship on protecting against electricity rate hikes. So that was sort of the previous slide I mentioned. Basically, right, if you have a consistent energy source from solar, whether you own it yourself or whether it's through a power purchase agreement, the value that you're paying for that electricity is set. It doesn't sort of change as the market changes, right? So if the market goes up dramatically, they're going to be impacted by, you're not going to be impacted by the market going up as dramatically, right? So again, sort of levelizing that cost of power over time, because if you own it yourself, you've paid for it up front, and that value of that electricity is going to stay consistent over that time frame. Or if it's in a power purchase agreement, it's already sort of established in the agreement what you're paying for power, right? So instead of being subject to electricity prices in the summer, certain summer months jumping up to 20-30 cents a kilowatt hour, you're protected by having solar on site or a power purchase agreement in hand. And then I guess along those lines, a question on billing to the customer. So again, it does depend. So if you're in a system that a town owns a system, it's on your roof, your billing structure doesn't change very much. Essentially, what would happen is you would receive a credit on your bill for every kilowatt hour that was generated in excess. It could be behind your existing meter. That means most of the electricity will be used within the facility, and not very much will be exported. If there are exports, you will get sort of a one-to-one credit back. And then we also have a structure where you set a new service and you put all the electricity generation to the grid. The reason that you do that is a different compensation structure. It's called the VEDR value stack. So basically, that's a market-based price adjustment based on when you're exporting that power. Again, that's more specific to if you own the system yourself. In a third-party arrangement, the billing is a little bit different, right? So you would be paying a third party, the project owner, for the value of the energy. So whatever's set in the contract, you'll be paying that rate for them. And then the utility is going to be giving you a credit. Again, it might be based on that value stack rate I mentioned. It could be based on a different rate, but generally you're going to get one bill from the third-party financier for the amount of electricity generated, and then you're going to get a credit that shows up on your bill with the utility. And so basically, the savings are the difference between what you're paying to a third party and what you're getting back in credits from the utility. And as we, the goal in structuring these is always that you're paying, you're receiving a higher credit back from the utility than what you're paying to the customer. It might not be dramatic just because that's kind of the way these are structured, but that is a way to get through that. So as I mentioned, the economics, what drives these projects, I mentioned 30% federal tax credit. Again, now available, the direct pay is now available for tax-exempt entities. New York State has a number of different grants. So I mentioned the Clean Energy Communities and Climate Smart Communities. Those are two specific programs that you can participate in with different requirements that, if you hit certain check off certain items, you can get additional grant money that you can put towards these projects, which we've done a number of times. What's not mentioned here is the New York Sun program. Again, this has sort of been the long-term incentive program that New York has used, gives a pretty substantial incentive to a project. Generally, it's around 20% of the total value. And then a power purchase agreement is one of the ways that municipalities can go about doing these projects. So I mentioned the Clean Energy Communities. So this, again, is a program from NYSERDA where they lay out some specific high-impact actions that you can do. And if you complete at least 4 of them, you can earn a Clean Energy Community designation. This has been around for a number of years. A lot of towns, there's a whole list of them. A lot of towns, communities have already achieved these. There's a lot of different ways to do it. One of the easiest is sort of a unified solar permit, right? Making it really easy for someone to put solar up on their house, not going through a detailed variance process or planning board process or anything like that. That's just one of the things that you can do. There's a litany of different items that you can do to accomplish that. And then as the community earns those points for those actions, you can get additional designations, right? So one of our customers who's done more than the 4 can get up to a 5-star designation, and they can get additional grant money that can then be used towards putting in solar, putting in EV chargers, a number of different things you can do there as well. And then the Climate Smart Community, kind of similar but a little bit different, but basically it's allowing these communities to register as climate smart communities, again, demonstrating their commitment and support of, different clean energy and sustainable efforts that you can do with your level. And then that program and help governments, identify grants, try to find opportunities for electrical vehicles, and do other sort of technical assistance, feasibility studies on different programs they can do. So two different programs, but both kind of accomplishing the same goals here. So I mentioned at the top the village of Brockport. So this is a capped landfill. The village of Brockport had this piece of land. They weren't really doing anything else with it and wanted to understand what we could do. So so this is owned by a third party. Someone else financed and funded the entire project. We built it, and then all of the electricity generated by those systems goes to village-owned facilities, as well as the fire department, the Department of Public Works, the library. So we sort of structured it as a way that it was not just directly for the village itself, but for other entities within the village. At the time, it was actually way more complicated than it is now. We had to do some different steps to get those accounts in, but they've since changed the rules. It's what's called remote crediting that allows you to just designate, it's a lot easier to designate different off-takers in these projects. So again, a town could say, well, we only need, a couple 100,000 kilowatt hours, but we have, a school building that would be interested, or some other business entity even. So there's a lot of different ways that you can structure these, and there's a lot of flexibility around it. So, and just for an example on the PPA, in 2022, the village got over $31,000 in credits. That was a big year just because electricity prices were so high. Again, talking about that volatility. And then in years when maybe the electricity rates are not as high, their savings, they still have those savings, but maybe not to the same level. So, and generally, what we tell our customers and the people that we work with is, you do have to look at these projects over the lifetime, right? They are operational for a minimum of 25 years. And, over that lifetime, understanding, as electricity prices go up, the savings are going to go up. And so it's going to become more and more valuable as time goes along. Another example, very similar to Brockport, this is Village of Lima, 25-year PPA. This was not on a landfill, so it's a little more expensive to build on a landfill, but similar size project. Again, power purchase agreement, same type of setup there as well. And again, I think to point out system sizing, oftentimes the system size will be determined by a number of things. One is how much electricity the off-taker needs. So in these cases, the Village of Brockport and Village of Lima, this was as much as they could take. If you produce more than they use, really the value goes down, and that's where, if you're able to find additional off-takers, that allows you to build a larger system. And then the town of Irondequoit, this was funded through the Clean Energy Communities program. They sort of hit the thresholds to get additional grant funding, and that supported two solar projects, one on the public safety building and one on the new Department of Public Works system they built there. So again, great projects owned by the town. This was before the tax credit rules came into effect, so they didn't get the benefits of that, but they're still generating a lot of electricity savings there. And then I think just to talk about, although we're focused on solar and that's sort of what most of what we do and most of our experience, more and more technologies are becoming more available and more sort of realistic to supporting projects. So like battery storage is a big one. There's a battery storage incentive coming out from NYSERDA. I think batteries are still very expensive. So the case for them is really about, are we providing some level of resiliency? Are we offsetting, there's been some factories that have mini outages that, battery storage solution will help minimize that. So those are sort of the case studies. Just getting a battery storage, just to have it, that doesn't, I don't think, make a ton of sense at this moment, sort of in the right circumstances. And then EV charging, right? I'm sure every community has is getting EV charging stations installed. Certainly something we can help with. Generally, we roll that in with other, if we're doing a solar project, we can roll in an EV charging option as well. So a lot of different ways to do that. And again, there's a lot of funding support for EV charging as well. So this was just a slide, just a more talk in general about supporting solar development. I think there's obviously a lot of going back here. There's a lot of systems that have been installed around the state, more and more popping up in more rural areas. And I think we're all aware of maybe some of the controversies around it. So I think, again, New York State is supporting these projects. There's a lot of there's a big push to install more of these and sort of hit the goals that the state has set to hit, to offsetting carbon and reducing the impacts of climate change. And so this is one of the ways to do it. So, there are limits to how much solar can be installed based on, where it is and based on where you're interconnecting to a substation. And, oftentimes there's sort of minimal areas where you can actually do this. But, there are still spots where there's capacity available. And I think it's more about just providing some insights to towns on how to, allow responsible solar development. I think, GreenSpark prides itself on being a good neighbor and wanting to be respectful to, what towns are trying to accomplish while still, acknowledging that we do need to deploy these systems and do need to build them. So, there are certain things that towns can do to help support these without, just letting a developer come in and dictate the terms, but providing an avenue that these projects can be built. So just laying out just some general ones. There's certainly more than this, but one is a solar code, right? A solar code helps anyone active in the solar industry to understand what the requirements are, right? What are the design standards that you're looking for? What are setback requirements? Giving a clear path to doing this, because I think we've gotten into situations before where if a town doesn't have a solar code, it's sort of the developer and the solar company going into it don't sort of know what the expectations should be, but then the town also doesn't have a clear process on well, when do we approve this? How do we approve this, right? So I think adopting a solar code is a great step for a town to say, here's what we can accept. This is what we want to allow here, obviously within reason. And then I think this is an interesting one. It's, encouraging solar in particular locations, right? I think an acknowledgement that, right, that there's going to be solar that will be installed in most communities in New York State. And, towns have the ability to dictate where those can go, right? I think, like we showed a landfills are great locations for doing this, or vacant lands, right? And sort of whether you can put in some requirements on where those specific zoning uses to allow for solar are, and sort of designate this is where these can go. And by providing that information, again, it helps the industry know, okay, well, this is where we need to target with this customer. I think also that certain areas are going to be more impactful, right? I think oftentimes towns will say, well, it's approved in industrial zoned areas. The tricky part with industrial zoned areas is that the land is extremely expensive, and oftentimes solar is not sort of is not beneficial enough to a property pursue, which is often why we looked at some of these either vacant lands or also agricultural areas. And I think in those agricultural areas, a number of towns have taken an approach where that it's from a solar farm can actually have pretty substantial impacts to supporting, and actually in many cases allow them to continue to own their land and continue to operate their business because they're getting this residual income. So I think it's just important for communities to think about that solar can be sort of used as tool to help agricultural areas, to help farmers, to help small farms. Even with very specific guidelines where, maybe it's saying you could use X% land, or something along those lines. The solar industry is able to sort of be flexible and to meet those terms, again, within reason, and sort of provide a project that's beneficial to the landowner and to the community as well. And then I think the other approach here is, different solutions that can just enhance benefits to the town, right? A lot of towns have host community benefits where, as part of the project, we're agreeing to provide some funding, whether that's to a specific project, via a specific program within the town. There's opportunities for conservation easements, right, which we've done in a number of places where we're setting aside land outside of the solar array as part of our process. Again, sometimes towns will just say right out, like, we don't want this in our town. Different avenues can do that can provide pretty significant benefits, not to mention the property tax benefits that come along with it, and still allow solar to happen for benefits to solar education in the community, going around and meeting with towns and sort of talking about, what are the benefits of solar. Solar can offset or replace commercial utility costs, again, talking about reducing that volatility, providing certainty on what you're paying for electricity. The benefits to homeowners, they can cover 55% or more of the solar project costs through the tax credits. And then commercial entities can cover up to 100%. Again, there's additional federal tax credits. There's the USDA REAP program, which we didn't mention, but again, is another funding program for entities in USDA rural areas, which is a pretty large swath of land. So there's a lot of different ways to support it that are beneficial to municipalities, to residences, to business, that everybody should be aware of. And again, we're going to continue to see electricity rate hikes. All the local utilities have proposed rate hikes to the Public Service Commission. So just something we expect is going to continue going forward. Yeah, and then, as I mentioned, GreenSpark will come to events, provide some education to folks on solar, whether it's, they want it on their house, they want to understand what the benefits are specifically in New York or what funding's available. So there's a lot of different things that we'll do, and happy to come out to events or co-host a webinar or anything like that. So please reach out to us. We'd like to be a resource and help people understand and continue to adopt solar in New York. So yeah, so that's pretty much the overview of the system. If there's any questions, feel free to throw them up on the chat, and we'll wait a few more minutes if anybody has anything else, and yeah. Not seeing anything yet, but again, you can always follow our emails on here. If you have other questions to follow up on, please let us know. If you're interested in learning more about any of the events that we could come to, happy to do that as well. So please reach out. Yeah, appreciate on taking the time out of their schedule today, and have a great day. Thanks all.